Will Kursk prove once again to be a turning point of the Russia-Ukraine war? The Ukrainian offensive in Kursk did manage to achieve all three levels of surprise: strategic, operational, tactical. Don't forget, Russia had agreed to withdraw its troops from the gates of Kyiv. This was one of the most thinly manned sectors of the Russian border. The American satellites had picked up this gap and they had told Ukraine to exploit this gap for the offensive. So the simple fact of the matter is they have pushed in about 12,000 troops. What was their objective? I think now the time has come that we can expect a very, very massive Russian response. The Russians are hopping mad, and I don't think they are in any mood for peace talks or ceasefires right now. Military experts the world over are taking a close look at the Kursk battle. The Ukrainian army's sudden and surprise incursion into the Kursk Oblast of Russia. They started on the 6th of August, but it is likely to enter the military history books for its great significance in military strategic terms. Don't forget, Kursk was the turning point of the entire war in the East during the Second World War, during what the Russians called the Great Patriotic War, when the German invasion, the tide of German invasion was turned at Kursk. Will Kursk prove once again to be a turning point of the Russia-Ukraine war? That remains to be seen, but for the time being, there are very pertinent lessons that are being examined in all the war colleges, staff colleges, military establishments and institutions of the world. Why? The simple fact is that Kursk is important because it has shown how strategic surprise, in fact, surprise at the strategic, operational and tactical levels can be achieved in an era of 24/7 satellite surveillance, AWACS surveillance, drone surveillance, total battlefield transparency, total situation of transparency on the battlefield. How can we still achieve surprise? Because let's face it, the Ukrainian offensive in Kursk did manage to achieve all three levels of surprise: strategic, operational, tactical. It has been a very well planned, meticulously planned NATO-Ukraine kind of a composite operation, which has been in the works for a very long time. And to that extent, it merits deep study and analysis for the military lessons that it holds out for armed forces the world over. So how was this surprise achieved at all three levels: strategic, operational, tactical? Let me take them one by one. Strategic level. The Ukrainians and the West had started talks about peace talks, a conference in Switzerland, very grand conference in Switzerland, where Ukraine held, massive jamboree, less Russia. And Ukraine dictated terms of peace and the whole world was supposed to sign onto this, including India, which wisely decided to refrain, though it did send representatives there at the fairly high level, but it refrained from signing. So the simple fact is they started this peace offensive for the third time. The first time it was the Minsk Accord, under cover of which nobody was sincere about the Minsk Accord, apart from, of course, the Russians, who very sincerely wanted to stave off conflict. At least Putin did. But that time period was used to build up the Ukrainian armed forces into a formidable fighting machine. Had Russia done in 2014 what it had done in 2022, it would have been over in a matter of less than a week, because the Ukrainian armed forces just weren't ready for war then. But the Minsk Accords were signed deliberately to gain that time to build up the military power of Ukraine to make it into a battering ram to destroy Russia, without the NATO dirtying its hands. So they started this peace offensive first in Minsk and gained time. Russia was taken for a ride in Minsk. Second time was when Russia launched its invasion in February 2022. By April 22, it had gained most of the objectives that it had set out to achieve. 60% of Donetsk, 90% of Luhansk, land bridge to Crimea, the entire Ukrainian coast, less Odessa, right? So at that time, Putin was very keen for peace talks because at the grand strategic level, Putin, considers the Ukrainian as his Slav cousins. And he's not keen to antagonize, or was not keen to antagonize them beyond a particular point. And he wanted to, just teach a lesson, to give a salutary message, and then get back to relations as per their historical norm of cousins, being cousins. Don't forget, Ukraine is the home of the Orthodox Church. So Putin has been very keen from the very outset to keep it invasion light, not use very heavy force in the classical Russian method of war. The classical Russian method of war uses mass and high tech. First echelon, second echelon, third echelon, operational maneuver group, masses of tanks, thousands and thousands upon tanks, and very heavy usage of tube artillery, rocket artillery, combat aviation to just steamroll. But the Russian offensive in Ukraine was called a special military operation, as distinct from war, Please don't forget that fact. And Putin has somehow been very dogmatically, insistent on not treating it as war. His general staffs and then the public, the right-wing public in Russia, was very keen that this is a phony war. We should end it. We should have a real war and finish it once and for all. But it has dragged on for 3 years because of Putin's insistence on keeping it invasion light, not using the full war-waging potential of Russia, not treating it as war but as a special military operation. So in any case, after he had secured his initial objectives in April, he had talks in Belarus and then talks in Turkey, and a very decent, compromise had been worked out by which Russia would vacate all the territories captured, less Crimea, and in return for Ukraine's pledge of neutrality and a pledge not to join NATO. That was all. It would have been a very high point for Zelensky to finish his war on a big hurrah that he had managed to fight the Russians to a stalemate and, then get them out of his territory just by peace talks. And as a goodwill gesture, don't forget, Russia had agreed to withdraw its troops from the gates of Kyiv. The gates of Kyiv. That is the, way, that is the extent to which Russia was prepared to go to have peace and to bury the hatchet and to call it quits. But Boris Johnson was then flown into Kyiv to read the Riot Act out to Zelensky, that no way would the NATO accept him. They wanted to use Ukraine as a battering ram to batter Russia down, to cause a collapse of the regime in Moscow, to cause regime change, to cause Putin to flee, what have you. There were grand designs to cause an economic collapse of Russia a la the Soviet Union in 1990. So he read the Riot out that we are keen to fight Russia to the last Ukrainian, and there are plenty of Ukrainians left, so you will have to go on fighting. You will get all the support that you want from the United States, from NATO, etc. The second time they took Russia for a ride, and the third time they took Russia for a ride has been this recent burst of peace talks in the month of June, July, etc. And in fact, even the Indian Prime Minister has been roped into the peacemaking efforts. Unfortunately, a little bit too late. I shall talk of that later. The simple fact of the matter is that these peace talks, this massive thrust towards peace settlement, negotiations, ceasefire, etc., lulled Russia into complacency at the strategic level. So, because of that peace offensive, the Ukrainians were able to achieve surprise at the strategic level. One, talk of the operational level. At the operational level, the Ukrainians spread the message on various channels that Russia was about to attack in Sumy. A major Russian attack was expected in Sumy. And to an extent, there are media reports that even the Russians had done their bit to fan this perception. For whatever reason, I'm not very sure. But they had started demining the border of Kursk. And that demining was to facilitate a Russian offensive, a broad Russian offensive through this gap, the Kursk salient, you see. And therefore, whatever troop movements that were done towards Sumy were interpreted by Russia as defensive. Please don't forget that in this era of total battlefield transparency, 24/7 satellite coverage through night, through day and night, through dense fog, through clouds, etc., you can spot any concentration of enemy troops, all the tanks, every single tank, every single truck, and now almost every single soldier. See, you can spot all the troop concentrations, the tank concentrations, but you cannot make out intentions. Satellite surveillance does not give you the intention of the force. So with satellite surveillance, you can spot the concentration of troops and tanks and guns, but you cannot make out the intentions of the force. So in the instant case, the Russians very naively, they surmised that the intention of the troop concentrations being done at Sumy was defensive and not offensive. So they were lulled into total complacency. At the tactical level, the Ukrainians used, the tactical device of what is called fractionalized orders of march. What they brought up initially they didn't bring up whole formations, because the very identity of the formation gives out the nature of their task. So, 1 battalion of the 80th Airborne Brigade, 1 battalion of 22 Mechanized Brigade, 1 battalion of the TA Brigade, which is a defensive formation, were brought up initially to make about a brigade strength, about 1,000 men in Sumy, which didn't pose such a major threat. And then they launched the attack with these are hardcore battalions. The Americans had provided electronic warfare equipment to jam the frequencies of the Russian Lancet drones, kamikaze drones, to jam their signal communication frequencies to create total chaos, on the battlefield. Now, there were two lines of defense which could be picked up even by satellites, but they were not manned. This was one of the most thinly manned sectors of the Russian border. The American satellites had picked up this gap, and they had told Ukraine to exploit this gap for the offensive. The fighting in the east, there are defense lines which have been there in Situ since 2014. That is the densest defense in the world. And quite obviously, any Russian offensive there has been very slow grind of attrition, slow slog of attrition. They are taking, weeks and months to make small gains of a few hundred meters. Now they've started speeding up a bit. But the fact is, even now that pace is very slow, because those are very dense defenses, heavily manned. Here there was nothing. So you could afford to make a very, gallant-looking Balkalava charge, a blitzkrieg of sorts, because there is nothing to hold you back. So the Americans identified this gap. They passed it on to the Ukrainians, And this is exactly what had happened in August, September 2022, when the Russians had pulled troops out of Kharkiv to reinforce against the Ukrainian attacks in Kherson. The Americans had picked up that move out of troops. They had picked out that there was a total gap. There was a total gap in the Russian defenses, as the Russians, whatever they were there, were withdrawing to the line of the Oskil River. And that is the time they had told the Ukrainians to go and charge. And they had mustered 2-3 brigades together. The 80th Airborne Brigade was part of that. And with their light mechanized infantry, Stryker vehicles, Marders, etc., they had just charged into the empty space and given the world an impression that they had launched a brilliant blitzkrieg of the sort the Germans were doing in World War II. You can do that in a place where there is nothing to contest. But in seriously contestation areas, we know the pace of operations has been reduced to a crawl because of the heavy firepower of artillery, tube artillery, rocket artillery, FAB, glide toss bombs, and the FAV drones, which have created mayhem on the battlefield. So, they had selected a gap, they had pointed the Ukrainians towards that side. Initial attack went in with about 1,000 troops of these 80th Airborne Brigade, 22 Mech Brigade and a TA battalion from the TA Brigade. They found the first line almost virtually unmanned, just border defense guards who were taken by complete surprise. They were not anticipating this offensive. They had used electronic warfare equipment to jam the Russian drones, to jam the Russian communications, and they achieved total surprise and they found the area unheld. So when they found that area unheld, they quickly signaled up the follow-up formations. 1,000 they started the attack with 1,000 troops, and now 11,000 more troops were poured into this gap. And they have gone in almost about to the depth of 20 to 30 kilometers. Some of their columns had just dashed the mechanized columns and subsequently had to pull back a bit. And the Russian response was very disjointed. Some more, very good tactics that were unveiled in this particular conflict. The Ukrainians used the remotely delivered mines, which are fired by artillery shells, to mine all the roads along which the Russian reinforcements were to come. I mean, those were clearly visible. Those were clearly visible, and they mined all those roads. They also used defensive scatterable mines, which were again, fired by the artillery tubes, so that they could protect their flanks of their offensive. And they had brought in their air defense artillery. They had milked their best offensive formations from the Eastern Front. Now, this is a big controversy, and the world is waiting and watching to see which way it goes. A number of military experts said this was stupid. This was downright stupid, where the main Russian attack was coming. You take out the best fighting formations, you take out air defense resources, you take out drone resources, and you take them to the north. You open the path for the Russians in the east. But this seems to have been a very deliberate gamble, very desperate, deliberate gamble, forced upon the Ukrainians once again by their American and NATO masters, and who have dictated the entire this plan. The rationale is very simple. The bulk of the Russian forces are in the east and in the north, Kharkiv right down to the eastern front and down to the southern front in Kherson. And to that extent, the Russian border per se is very lightly held, because the Russians believed that they could leave those border defenses very thin because of the threat of nuclear retaliation, because of the threat of severe escalation if certain red lines were crossed. The unfortunate problem for the Russians has been that each one of their red lines have been crossed successively, and the Russians have done very little about it. Very little. They have been threatening, and to the extent that Zelensky went on record to state that all the Russian red lines were naive and there was a bluff, and the Ukraine had called the Russian bluff, and the Russians had done nothing. To an extent, he is right. Putin, instead of calling it an invasion and a major escalation, invasion of Russia proper, unacceptable, not just border raids by so-called Russian partisans, but a full-fledged military operations with not just Ukrainian troops, frontline troops, but also by NATO mercenaries, NATO special forces heavily involved, operating in Russian Ukraine's Polish troops, Polish Ukraine ethnicity troops operating in this area in Ukrainian uniforms, Brandenburger style. And this was a major escalation. But Putin has played it down by calling it a terrorist incursion and an anti-terrorist operation. So, to an extent, he is inviting more such intrusions, and this is precisely what Ukraine has tried in the last 2-3 days. Not only incursions in the area of Kursk, but also towards the Kharkiv side, towards the other Belgorod and other Russian border areas. So the simple fact of the matter is they have pushed in about 12,000 troops. What was their objective? Their objective was to make a dash for the Kursk nuclear plant, which is about 60 kilometers still from where the Ukrainian front lines have more or less stabilized in the Kursk area. 60 kilometers plus it was. So if they had held that plant, they could have held it hostage. They could have damaged that plant to cause nuclear meltdown, to cause a kind of a dirty bomb effect into Russia, the heart of Russia, the Russian border province of Kursk. And they could have held that plant hostage for exchange of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant in Ukraine, which is under Russian occupation. The second aspect that was being conjectured was that, Zelensky said that he wants it as a kind of a buffer between, just like Russia was trying to gain a buffer zone in Kharkiv. So this is a Ukrainian buffer to prevent any Russian attacks towards Sumy, towards Kyiv, etc. The third aspect is that it was a spoiling attack to put off any Russian offensive, projected Russian offensives from this direction. And also, the major rationale was to pull out Russian fighting formations from the east, where they were now making headway for Pokrovsk, which would be a great turning point in this war. They were heading for Kramatorsk, Sloviansk, etc. They had already captured New York and they are pushing ahead. Ukrainians have already ordered the evacuation of Pokrovsk, a major town on the supply routes here. If that is gone, the whole front would be endangered. But they took that risk of denuding the eastern front to try this mad caper in Kharkiv. So, will it succeed? Is it likely to work? It's still wide open. It's still wide open because the simple fact is that a lot of precious resources have been taken away from the main battleground of the east and switched towards an offensive which is very high in media value, TikTok value, makes very good, imagery on social media and, gives the impression of a great blitzkrieg into the thin air. But the fact is that Russia provided the thin air. And General Lavrov, unfortunately, is a very unfortunate Russian general. He did badly last time in the offensive in Kharkiv. It is rather strange that there's been no price to pay. And the Ukrainians and the Americans are now laughing and saying that Russian general in the northern theater has again proved to be a bit of a operational disaster. Be that as it may, they have made that penetration. And now, let me tell you the latest. The latest is that they are now playing a dangerous game of chicken. Russia refused to be, hustled by this incursion into Kursk. They said this is not a strategic area. They blocked the further progress towards Kursk nuclear plant. They blocked the progress towards the east. Only some western portion was not so well blocked, and Ukraine immediately tried to expand west along the river. They blew up 3 bridges on the river. Russians put up 10 to 12 pontoon bridges, a fair number of which have been destroyed. The Ukrainians are claiming that the Russian troops which are ahead of the river, between the river and the Ukrainian border, they will bottle them up and they'll force them to surrender 3,000 troops, etc. So far, nothing of that sort has happened. Now, just the last 2 days, there has been a major development. And the world has sat up to take note of this development. What is that development? The Ukrainians have now decided to make a major gamble. 20 to 30% of the Ukrainian armed forces have now been pushed towards the north, towards Kursk, towards Belgorod and the Russian border to try and make major incursions into Russia proper. They seem to have decided, okay, we've lost the east. We've lost Donetsk, we've lost Luhansk. It's more or less game over. And they have very strong defenses, so they are hoping to extract a price in that very heavily built up defense area, defense lines that go back to 2014. And so they'll try and use the strength of the defense lines to slow them down. They are quite resigned to the fact that they will lose this area. So they are trying to make counterbalancing gains of Russian territory, which they can sit on the bargaining table and then bargain over, right? So 20 to 22% of their, the Ukrainian armed forces have now been pushed towards Kursk and Belgorod. Now, their attempts to penetrate into other Russian neighboring provinces of Belgorod, etc., have been totally stymied, frustrated, stopped at the border itself, because now the Russians are far more alert. They were taken by surprise in Kursk, not so in Belgorod, not so in the other areas, not so in the Kharkiv area. But in the Kursk area, they are trying to once again resume the dash towards Kyiv proper, and try and again now they are talking loudly on TikTok channels, etc., of trying to seize the Kursk nuclear plant. Will they be able to? I have my very grave doubts. Simple fact is that the Russians have brought in their entire strategic bomber fleet within very close, and they are likely to hit this area very hard with glide toss bombs, with tube artillery, with rocket artillery, and with their FPV drones, which are now, the electronic warfare range, they are out of that range. The Ukrainians had tried to, counter the Russian air power by striking the Russian air bases with long-range drones, a fair amount of which was shot down, but some did get through and have caused a bit of damage and disruption. But the simple fact is that the Russians claim they have inflicted on these 12,000 Ukrainian troops about 4,600 personal casualties, 650 vehicles they claim to have destroyed, and about 63 tanks, they say, many of which are Abrams and Challengers, have been destroyed by their air power and drone power. So, will the Russians be able to bottle it up? Will the Russians be able to destroy these, cut off their lines of communication, create serious problems for this Ukrainian invasion force along with whatever NATO elements are with it? And if all this equipment and manpower is lost, Ukraine can ill afford it. Ukraine can ill afford it. The Russians are now hopping mad. Putin is livid with rage. And so far it was Putin who had been, imposing caution on the Russian operations in Ukraine. For example, he had been forced by the military pressure to mobilize 300,000 troops, reservists, in 2022 itself. And these are the reservists that had formed the Surovikin line and stopped all Ukrainian offensives, destroyed the Ukrainian offensive last year. So-called famous 2 counter-offensives were destroyed and with heavy losses. And the simple fact is that then he had almost recruited 250,000 conscripts. Now, we all thought when the Kursk invasion took place that these 250,000 conscripts were all ready and they would possibly be used to counter this and to even possibly surround them from both sides and invade Ukraine proper towards Kyiv, in the direction of Kyiv, which has long been speculated about. But Putin, it appears, has given an assurance that the Russian conscripts would not be used in the war, in the special military operations in Ukraine. I can't understand the logic, but the simple fact is that when they were used in 2022, the conscripts had taken heavy losses and proved to be the weakest link in the Russian chain. So the Russians are now trying to use volunteer troops, professional troops, and not use the conscripts. But I mean, in such a situation, how Russia can decide not to use such a major military resource and keep it out, fight with one arm tied behind its back, is now getting a bit confusing. There's a lot of outcry in Russia proper as to why we are fighting this phony war. Why is Russia not using the full force, full manpower and equipment resources to finish this war once and for all, instead of dragging it on into the third year? I think now the time has come that we can expect a very, very massive Russian response. It could take the shape of a major military offensive towards Kharkiv, towards Odessa, or both. That remains to be seen whether how much they can do in 1 year. But I think some decisions would be forced upon Russia now, in terms of the simple fact that the 250,000 conscripts may now be asked to serve for 24 months instead of 12 months. Otherwise, they were going back and a fresh batch was coming and all that. So they may be held on, and they could be utilized to, once the eastern portions are taken over in Pokrovsk and Kramatorsk and Sloviansk, etc. They might hold the line there while the combat-hardened troops are switched towards Kyiv or switched towards Odessa to launch a major counter-offensive that has long been talked about, projected about. But Russia will now have no option but to do it, because the simple fact is that Ukraine is being used as a battering ram to try and destroy Russia. To economically destroy Russia. That economic project failed badly, but they hope that, continued bloodletting will bleed Russia white. And it may be in Russia's interest now to finish this conflict very soon. Now comes the related aspect of our Prime Minister's visit to Poland and to Ukraine. It's a very noble gesture. India is very well placed to, it has good relations with both Russia, with Ukraine and the West. So it is theoretically very well placed to try and broker a peace settlement, try and broker at least a ceasefire in situ or whatever, And towards that extent, there were a lot of hope expressed. Even the Americans were keen, as part of their deception offensive, that Modi should go to Ukraine. That would sort of balance out for Modi's visit to Moscow and the hugs with Putin that seem to have angered the West, and Ukraine has been making a lot of song and dance. Will this major gamble, major initiative to restore peace work? It is very well intentioned, and if it works, my God, it will be kudos from the world over. But unfortunately, once again, it seems to have been a bit mistimed. It has coincided with the Ukrainian offensive into Russia proper. The Russians are hopping mad, and I don't think they are in any mood for peace talks or ceasefires right now. So if the Russians won't play ball, I mean, even Ukraine, I don't think would like to have have peace talks and a ceasefire when it feels that it is making incursions or making headway into the incursion into Kursk area. So it remains to be seen what will be the outcome. We will hope for the best, but realistically, this has been, unfortunately, the timing couldn't have been worse. From the military point of view, the military situation has fast outpaced whatever plans were there to try and mediate a ceasefire using our goodwill with both sides. But we will still wait and watch and hope for a positive outcome. But realistically, it is highly unlikely that any concrete ceasefire would emerge, a proposal would emerge from this surprise visit to Ukraine at this particular juncture. The Russians are thinking of retaliation. I'm sure they'll hold it back till Prime Minister Modi is there. But then they are going to hit back and hit back very hard because of serious provocations in terms of the Kursk incursion, in terms of drone attacks on Russian airfields, drone attacks on Moscow proper. The people of Russia are enraged. They are fully behind Putin in this particular matter. And any kind of kite flying that the people are very upset, and they will, we've been hearing of a coup against Putin and Putin in full flight from Moscow. All those are pipe dreams. To the contrary, Putin's popularity has shot up to 80%, and the Russian population is angry and fully behind Putin now. And even if he decides to mobilize, launch full-scale mobilization and go the whole hog and finish up this messy business, I'm sure he'll have all the backing of the Russian Republic. It might be better for all concerned that this campaign is swiftly and mercifully brought to an end, brought to a conclusion, whichever way. The Americans seem to be in no mood. The Europeans seem to be, NATO doesn't seem to be any mood for peace talks and ceasefire. They are the biggest obstacles to peace at the present moment. But the elections are coming in the month of November in Washington, and it remains to be seen which way things will go from there. There could be a paradigm shift in the whole situation. So whatever Russia has to do, whatever Ukraine have to do, they'll have to do it now. So now is not the time that peace talks could fructify. Thank you.